every software company has a unique challenge or their own set of circumstances of what they're looking to achieve. I could just give a couple of examples. Sometimes we'll see a software company which, has been around for maybe a decade or so. The UI looks dated. A simple refresh might help them convert more free trials because of the quality of the perception has gone up. You might have a challenge with retention in which there might be UX problems within the workflow, or it's not completely easy to add new users or complete tasks. So retention may be a sticking point.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel Podcast, where we lock engineers, designers, and a marketing guy in a room for 5 days and only let them out when they've invented the next killer app. Coming soon to Netflix. Anyone seen Beast Games? I think this world has gone crazy. But I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Well, welcome again to 2025. What if the secret to winning in today's crowded software market isn't just about what your product does, but how it feels to use it? In a world where AI is no longer just a buzzword, but a competitive necessity, the game is shifting and shifting fast. Designing software isn't just about functionality anymore. It's about creating experiences and experiences that are so seamless, so intuitive, they almost feel like magic. But here's the catch. If your design doesn't reduce complexity, delight users, and deliver value fast, your competitors are just one click or maybe one voice command away from stealing the show. Today, we're diving into the massive wave reshaping SaaS, AI first design, and the art of crafting user experiences that hook, help, and hold on to customers. From chat based interfaces to the holy grail of reducing time to value. We'll unpack what this all means for companies ready to scale smart, not just fast. And I promise, this isn't just your typical, let's just add AI and call it a day kind of conversations. It's about creating real experiences for your users. So stick around because by the end of this episode, you'll have actionable insights to turn your software into the kind of product that users rave about. And maybe even a few strategies to outpace the competition while they're still figuring out what GPT even stands for. Our expert guest last week was Wes Bush, only my second repeat guest ever. And we dove deep into the mechanics of product led growth. He, of course, is the best selling author who really kind of pioneered a lot of the tactics that we see out there that are being used today. And from building products that sell themselves to reshaping customer onboarding, Wes gave us all sorts of actionable insights, even some real insider stuff that every SaaS founder needs to hear. If you're curious about how your product could become your best salesperson, don't miss that episode. He even went into some really advanced stuff that he didn't talk about anywhere else. Really cool. And our founder last Tuesday was Cody Schneider. Cody is the CEO of Draft Horse AI and Swell AI. And they are redefining content marketing through innovative AI-driven automation. With a track record of transforming workflows and scaling startups, Cody shared practical strategies for turning bottlenecks into breakthrough growth opportunities using tools designed to amplify human potential. So good. If you missed either of those episodes, you got to go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Peter Loving, founder and CEO of UserActive. Peter has a proven track record of transforming underperforming SaaS products into growth powerhouses. With expertise in design sprints and strategic consulting, Peter empowers SaaS teams to create intuitive, high-impact user experiences that drive revenue and retention. So he's here today to share how AI is revolutionizing product design and why user-centered design is the ultimate SaaS growth hack. Welcome, Peter Loving.
Hey, Peter, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hey, Jeff, thanks so much for having me here. Excited to talk with you today.
Yes, I am too. Today is all about design and why UX UI matters and how we can make it great for the end users. And design is your background. And how did you transition from design to founding UserActive? And very, very different skill sets from design to building a company, I would think. How did that transition happen?
Yeah. Well, I guess I should start with my interest in design because I always found myself gravitating towards creative or problem solving related topics or subjects. So that led towards me taking an interest in product design. And first of all, that started by just being attracted by good design, seeing it almost like art, and appreciating that. Um, and I guess there's part of that that also the interest in problem solving and the interest in working on difficult challenges, creative problems, goes along with understanding everything about a product, how it's made, what it needs to do, who uses it, the functionality. So it takes a curious mind, and I found that having this type of curious mind, I actually found it in my early stage of career. It was difficult to fit into a job spec in a larger company. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs may feel that way,
Yes.
or business owners. And so that led me towards running my own almost freelance and consulting practice, really. And things just grew from there naturally. So um, I imagine you're familiar with the E-Myth, uh,
Yes,
famous E-Myth book, and
of
my
course.
story is a very classic case of this because I came from almost a skilled tradesperson, a product designer, and having grown through my own freelancing and consulting in towards starting a business, I've had to make the transition from somebody who operates a service or a skilled task person to what it takes to run a business and a very different skill set. So that's how I've transitioned. It all I'm in a community with a lot of agency owners, and one of the things that they say in there is a lot of them are accidental agency owners because
Yes.
they had a similar journey. They started off as a freelancer or a consultant, and they ended up, when it goes well and they start to take on more people, they ended up having an agency. So my story is kind of similar to that.
That's great. I think that's true for a lot of SaaS founders as well, kind of accidental entrepreneurs. They're doing their thing. A lot of them come from the technical side of the world and see an opportunity and, hey, I could build a solution to solve this. And so they do. And now they're founders. They have a company.
Yeah,
So I think that
yeah.
that's really interesting. That's your
I
story too.
I see that a lot with technical founders because, of course, they're
Yeah.
they're building things, building products or tech or plugins or widgets, and before you know it, they have something and they can, acquire customers and start a business. So yeah, I see that too. It's a fascinating way to start out.
Well, yeah, I think you're definitely right about that. I mean, starting out technical founders, and the more I talk to them, the more I hear, I'm really more a back end developer versus front end, and they can kind of do some front end stuff. Why do you think that so many SaaS companies, and it's especially in the early days, kind of overlook the importance of user experience of their products, and then how does that impact their growth trajectory?
Yeah, that it's really interesting, and I think, like we just mentioned, it's the nature of technical people who have the know-how to build products or work with databases or
Yeah,
back end, and they might build some solution. They see an opportunity or a problem that they can solve, so they naturally start to build a solution.
yeah,
Also, I often find that they might pair up with other technical people because they're like-minded or they're working in a similar context, so they get to know each other. And so we see that to be maybe the most prominent way for software companies to start, from my
yes,
experience. It's lots of kind of technical founders. And I think designers is overlooked at the beginning just because it's not necessarily always part of the founding team's core skill. Also, there's not necessarily the same appreciation for design as a product designer or somebody from a design background has. We see it as so fundamental, but when we work with the software companies, we often have a part of educating in the process a little bit,
mm,
and the value is almost realized later. In fact, when it clicks for a technical founder, they really start to value design. Um, but I think the reason it doesn't start in the very beginning is that you can get a product up and running, get it working. Sometimes there might be technical things with integrations or APIs, and even working with data. Um, so we see companies that start without having really what we call a UI, but
Yeah.
they're still functioning. And before they know it, having a business or company with some customers, um, a year or two down the line, they might start to hear, we've noticed your product doesn't have a great UI, or it's a little confusing. UX is a little confusing, and they might start noticing that some of their potential prospects might try out other tools or other products, and they see there's some competition. They start to notice the competition, and maybe there's another product in their market that has a really good UX. So that's traditionally how I've observed it going, very frequently.
Yeah. Well, and I growing up, kind of going from green screen to GUI was a big thing, and then start talking about that, and then we have UI, and that's really transitioned a lot to more UX. How would you describe the difference between UI and UX?
Mm. We see UX as the most fundamental aspect of the work. It's creating an experience that's easy for your users to understand. I always say it should be enjoyable for them to use, so
Yes.
that they associate a positive feeling when they log in to your software, when they use your software. And the UX work takes there's a lot of cognitive thinking that we do in UX work, coupled with research and understanding the user. So part of that work is defining, understanding how the user goes through the steps of a task that they need to accomplish, and creating a journey and a flow through the product that facilitates that easily in an intuitive nature, so that they don't have to do too much thinking or scratching their heads to figure it out. They can log into a product and just intuitively understand how to use it, and we guide them where to click and how to complete tasks. So that takes we like to categorize that as kind of research, understanding, and thinking work. And for UI, really what we're doing is, sure, there's some experiential components to it, but the large part of what we're doing is styling that interface, making it look great, giving it a high quality aesthetic, um, making it logical as well. The choice of the palette, the choice of things that might be cancel or stop or record, or would be in red, things that are done, complete, you know next, maybe green. Just those are logical parts of UI, but there's a slight crossover with UX there. But most of all, we consider UI making the product look sexy, look modern, look I would say look inviting or appealing to use, and the UX is the experiential component of that.
And that's something that impacts all of us. I'm sure you've all had experiences where we're using software and we're trying to accomplish a task, and we do, step one and two and three, and then the question in the middle is, well, from here I always go do this other thing. Why aren't they together? Why do I have to do, 5 clicks and open this other thing and go to this other screen to do that? Because I always do that after I do this, but they're disconnected. And we've also had experiences, I'm sure, where maybe we don't even notice it because it's just so easy. We just do the thing and it's done. And like, wow, that was easy.
Yeah, and usually those journeys, they seem simple and they seem easy, but it's because somebody else on the other side has done the thinking, the hard.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's like building a really nice road through a busy town. They have to clear things out, make it the route from A to B simple and easy, so that when that road is completely finished, it's just smooth to drive down or something like that. But the background work, the thinking has been done to make that feel easy and like a relief for the user.
And maybe that's one of the reasons it's overlooked is because when we have a bad experience, we know it, but then when we have a good experience, we kind of don't necessarily know it. It was really easy, but we don't necessarily think why. Maybe it
Yeah.
just Yeah, it was just easy. We kind of take it for granted. The road was smooth. Of
This
course.
is so true. This is so true. We say that good design is invisible.
Ah,
You know,
so good.
that's the thing. You don't really notice it until somebody might point it out and you go, "Oh, yeah, that was really good. That's designed really well. We didn't even think about it. We just used it." So, it's getting issues and friction out of the way. So for users, it's much more noticeable discomfort, pain, or friction in software than it is great design. So a lot of what we do is removing that friction.
So good. And that has to help growth as well, because once we have one of those good experiences, then we go have one that's not great. The contrast is just night and day. It's so obvious that and you look at it, and you go, well, why is it designed like this? It should work this other way.
Yeah, and that's when we start to see, in with software being competitive as it is today, that's when we start to
Yes.
see people can take trials of lots of different tools, and when they find one easy and intuitive, they will tend to gravitate there, and that can be part of the selection process. And also, when you do make the product easy to use and enjoyable, you start to see improvements in your user or behavioral metrics or conversion rates and things like this. So it really does impact bottom line revenue ultimately. A lot of investment in design and in product design. That's what we see.
It's definitely a competitive market. And last time we talked, you mentioned time to value. You elaborate on that and how improving usability impacts satisfaction and retention.
Yeah. So one of the places where you want to make the most impact is that first impression. So when a user takes a trial for your software, or if you have a sales-led approach, they book a demo, um, you really want your software to make a strong first impression and wow them. And the concept within SaaS of time to value is that period of time from when the user first signs up for a tool to when they experience their very first piece of value from that software. And ideally, you want that to happen as early as you can in the free trial process. And based on the nature of the software, that time can be greater or less, but part of the design challenge there is reducing that time as much as you can so that the user has this eureka or aha moment, they like to call it in product um, management, when they first experience that in a product. So um, a simple example of that I can give. We're working on a software at the moment which integrates with accounting software, and it gives accountants greater visibility into financial reporting. So ideally, what we want to happen there is that the user signs up during their free trial. They're able to integrate their accounting software, Xero or QuickBooks, something like that, and then immediately see some granularity that they were looking for that they couldn't see in their previous software. And at that point, you've got your user signed up, you've gone through an easy flow, and they're already saying, "Oh, hey, I can see how this is really going to help." And they get that feeling. We want to give them that feeling as quickly as we can.
Oh, so good. And that's a big difference in just the user experience when you have that and you get that quick win, that dopamine hit. You want to keep going. You're making progress because usually when you sign up for a trial, you're looking to solve a problem. And the quicker you can get that first win, the more motivated you are to go and continue using it and get that second win and third. And
Yeah,
but when it takes
that's right.
forever to see that, it's so hard.
Yeah. And some software has that challenge by nature because it may be a more complex workflow. Um,
Sure.
but there's a lot of SaaS nowadays has you can get some value to the user pretty quickly, and that feeling that you just described, Jeff. If once when the user's feeling that, that's a part of in the journey in which we design the next step for them. So whilst they're feeling good and positive about receiving some value, we'll be like, "Oh, great. Okay, the next thing you can do is, and here's the next step." And we get them on that journey to getting tasks complete and getting more value. So Yeah, it's great. If you can get your user on that path early, you're really making great impression.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely want to get the quick win, especially when it's product led growth. If you're expecting the product to kind of deliver that value in the sales cycle, then yeah, that's
Yeah,
huge to have that happen quickly.
yeah, definitely.
So how does SaaS founders measure ROI of investing in better product design and usability? I mean, when you think about, we're going to spend the money and redesign the front end, what does that ROI look like? How do they figure that?
It's a really it's difficult, I think, because there are so many ways that it can impact. Um, and every software company has a unique challenge or their own set of circumstances of what they're looking to achieve. So I can just give a couple of examples. Sometimes we'll see a software company which, has been around for maybe a decade or so. The UI looks dated, and a simple refresh might help them convert more free trials because of the quality of the perception has gone up. Um, there might be, you might have a challenge with retention in which there might be some UX problems within the workflow, or it's not completely easy to add new users or complete tasks. So retention may be a sticking point. Um, and it all depends on what the priority or where the challenge in the product lies, and then setting a target around that. Um, so typical ones that we'll work on are things like reducing churn rate, increasing free trials to paid conversion rates, increasing account expansion or upgrades. And these are good to measure because you can get tangible revenue impact from them. And a lot of times you can attribute that directly to design. But there are also other times, we worked with one company and their revenue doubled in 6 months.
Wow.
So they said, "Hey, our revenue's doubled in 6 months since we've been working with you guys." I reached out to them and said, "Hey, is that just us, or is that just all your activity that you do, marketing
Right.
and stuff?" And they said, "No, it's all of it, but the work we've been doing is definitely a part of it." So sometimes it's more tangible, and other times it may be a small part of a broader effort. It makes up, it can work that way. So I'd say there are many ways to get ROI, but it's really important to know what you're prioritizing, know what challenge you're trying to solve, and articulate it, and set some goals, or yeah, define some goals around that.
Yeah. I think you really nailed it there. I mean, churn prevention for sure. Sales, increasing that just on the front end. And if you look at two products and one of them has kind of okay design and the other one looks really, really good, the perception I think is the one that looks good probably works better. It may or may not be the case, but I think our perception is that just because it looks better, it's more appealing, that it must be a better solution. That
Yeah,
value.
that's a good point. That's a good point. Well, I've had conversations before where a founder has said to me, "Hey, we don't care about design. We just want to see the results, the impact of it, or the product doesn't have to look great, but as long as it sells or solves a problem."
Yeah.
And I tend to agree with that. Even though I come from a design background, I tend to agree with that because a lot of products succeed that are not the most beautiful, and they don't need to be. But what you just touched on there with UI is it does improve the perception of quality, and
Yes.
that does lead a user to think, okay, the product must be better or must be easier to use. But the great combination is if you do have a great user experience, it is easy to use. Plus, you've got that modern, cutting edge looking UI. Then yeah, then you have a really powerful overall product there.
Yes. Yes. I think that's really interesting. And the other thing, I think it for your existing user base, it really gets them more invested. I think they get excited when they see something new coming out and that you're working on the product. And so if your team is excited about it and really kind of promoting that and we're making your life easier and then they use it and have that experience, they're like, wow, this is even better. Yeah, they're just more committed. They're on that journey with you instead of, kind of on the outside looking in because they're involved in that process, especially if they're giving feedback on what can be improved.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen a variety of things that happen when you do this. Is if a product has not had a UI update for some time, there's quite a bit of friction when something's released. People tend
Yes.
to like what they know. They're familiar with it, right? They have the habits around it. So when it changes, it's kind of a bit of a panic moment. It's like, oh, they forget how to use it or where things are, and they have to almost. There's an element of relearning. Um, and that can in the long term that works out really well in the medium to long term, but the first initial reaction can require some management of expectation and guiding the users, explaining to them that an update is coming, telling them what they building their anticipation before you release it. But for software companies that are releasing and shipping frequently, it does send a really great signal. The product is constantly being worked on and improved and getting better, and there is that anticipation of new features and there's this great thing that we're going to be able to use that's coming out soon. And one thing that I remind companies to do is to review their pricing, because when you keep investing in product, both from engineering and design perspective, and that product is improving over time, um, often teams can forget to update the pricing, or they feel nervous to increase
Right.
pricing. But I think that should be reflected, as the product significantly offers more value. Um, and that's another way that can impact ROI, is that you do reflect that in the pricing for the product as well.
Yeah, it's really smart to be thinking about that at the same time.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think there should be some strategy around it, at least reviewing pricing every 6 months and having a plan for that as you invest in the product more and more.
Ready to future proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed just for SaaS founders and C suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on demand fractional C suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling SaaS founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we got your back. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. Completely free, not a sales call. You can't buy anything on there. And we will pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com. That's where leaders evolve and companies transform. Well, for the users that are maybe a little bit more resistant to change or kind of fear change, we've been through some interesting UI changes over the years. The two that really come to mind, I think about like Microsoft Office,
Um,
Word, Excel. There's functions that I used to use all the time. I have no idea where they went and kind of given up. And the same thing happened with Adobe and changing their UI. Things that they used to be over here are now somewhere else, or they're in a sub menu. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this anymore. How do we make sure that it's a good experience when we roll that out and that the users come along for the ride instead of kind of give up and stop
yeah,
using the product?
that is a challenge. Well, I think one of the best ways is to have a strategy for releasing an update, and then it should have multi-channel touch points. So you may start in your email list, emailing customers and users to let them know about what's coming in the roadmap. what to expect. Also, you can let them know inside the product. We're big advocates for designing overlays, pop-ups, notifications, but we're also aware that a lot of users have a tendency to just close those or not necessarily engage with them,
Yeah.
like a lot of us
Not now.
do.
I'm trying to do my job.
Exactly. So we want to try to show them things, that the human rule that it takes approximately 7 times for somebody to be told or have something um, notified to them before it actually kind of sinks into their consciousness, and they start to be able to acknowledge it. So they might see a notification or two or an email, and it might not sink in immediately. They might not take the time to read it immediately, but the accumulated effect, at some point, we designed for that a little bit to help the user take that on board and yeah, understand it by then. And then we'll often do things like design a walkthrough of a new feature or a new update, which you can do. You see that a lot in onboarding, but it's also good to have walkthroughs for product changes, significant product changes. Maybe something in the knowledge base, maybe a little video about a little video tutorial or a video run through of what the updates are. So yeah, there's a lot of workload and investment in some of those things to do, but really we're just trying to get the attention of the user and help them on that. Help them get to adopting that new UI, which yeah, it can be a tricky thing to do.
Yeah. How do you advise founders to balance simplicity and design with a need to add features, especially as a product evolves over time?
This is a really challenging topic. I see it happening a lot where you get feature bloat or software over time just growing and growing. And sometimes I see that happening without any consideration to how the navigation or structure of the software should change in terms of how that's presented to the user. Um, when I see this, we often go back to the drawing board. So it's a case of looking at the feature set as a whole and then logically grouping features into workflow categories that make sense together. Like you might see this in big CRMs. Once they have lots of features, they'll segment them into marketing features, sales features, or customer support features. Just for a very kind of top level example. Um, and if you can reflect that in navigation and you have these categories, logical categories of feature sets, as the product scales and grows, you have a place to put new features in.
Mm.
And we sometimes could have, 1 to 3 levels of sub menus for feature sets to live. And just have a kind of well-considered navigation. So sometimes a case of revisiting your navigation and seeing if it does reflect, it has reflects the effort you've put into the product. So also reflect that in the navigation, designing it in such a way that it's logical and easy to, navigate through. Um, and one thing I've even seen a few times is when a company has been in that situation and they don't know where to put new features or they don't have a logical navigation label to fit them under, they put them into the settings menu. And then I've seen some software that has really great features just hidden away in their settings because they released them, but they didn't know or they didn't have a place to put them. So yeah, and that can happen sometimes when there's that there's not a kind of dedicated product thinking department on a team, or just it can also be put into that bucket of to do later. We're going to get round to this, but in the meantime, you have to keep shipping. So yeah, that can happen a lot, and yeah, just takes a good bit of thinking and logically grouping navigation. Think of it from the user, not from the technical perspective of what we've built and where it should fit based from an engineering standpoint.
That's difficult to actually put ourselves in the shoes of the user and think like they're going to think, because it's real easy because it's our product. It's our baby. We're like, well, of
Exactly.
course it goes there. It just makes total sense. But to the
Yeah.
user, they're like, where did that go?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. There's this thinking of engineering thinking. It almost relates to functionality, and where does functionality live? And if this functionality comes from this element of the database, then this functionality lives here. But from a user perspective, they might not live, relative to where the engineers put it, or the flow. The flow
Sure.
makes sense when you build it that way, but it doesn't make sense to use it that way. So we see that a lot, and it is hard to put yourself in the shoes of the user, think like the user, and the exercise there is really getting to know them intimately, understanding their workflow, understanding how they do what they do, um, and the more you can understand and relate and empathize with their work and what they're trying to achieve, the more that you can reflect it in a journey that makes sense for them.
Yeah. I could always tell, good design, or, if it's complete engineer, start looking at like drop down lists. And I
Yeah.
remember, looking at one of our own, and like, this makes no sense. Well, how is this sorted? And they go and look, oh, it's by database ID. Like, okay, how about
Yeah.
let's alpha sort, or look at a country list. I mean, how many people are filling out a form that live in Afghanistan, but it's still at the top? Yeah, it's really, really simple things to look, and how much attention to detail did they put in? And sometimes they want to hear my feedback, sometimes they don't. But what role does that user feedback play in the design process, and how do you make sure it's implemented effectively?
Yeah, that's a good question. In the design process, it's a fundamental role. It's a fundamental role. So we designers would a good product designer has trained their mind to think from the perspective of a user. And we almost think of ourselves as advocates for the user. So we really want to understand the business vision, what the business is trying to achieve. And obviously the business wants to serve that user too. But if you think from the perspective of advocating for the user, then we're trying to create the best possible experience for them. So there is a trade-off on how much can you invest in the product, how much can you really invest in design and engineering. There's a point at which you can give them great functionality and make it easy to use, but you might not have the budget of a Silicon Valley, Series B or C software company with a big product team. So it plays a fundamental role in understanding them, and one way we do that is observe what they do, how they behave, interview them, um, and invest a little bit in UX research. That is the hardest, from my experience. That's the hardest um, expense or investment to justify, because um, people don't necessarily see the inherent value in the early stage of a business. Plus, well, actually, in the early stage, you have the benefit of being very close to the user and getting direct feedback,
Yes.
and you're able to speak with them and do things that don't scale, do things manually, take calls. And it's a great thing that, as the business grows, that the product team can continue that exercise, really. And there are things that you can do that scale, and things that you might do on a project basis, like user interviews. Yeah, and was your second part to that question how you make sure you introduce it into the design
Yes.
process?
Yeah,
Yeah.
implement it and make sure that it's something that moves the product forward.
Yeah. Well, that's notoriously challenging, because what we always see is competing priorities.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Always.
always, right? And so the challenge in a product team is often prioritizing, um, what do we think is going to make the most impact here? You have a whole base of customers asking for different features or requests. There's also things in the product that we know don't work perfectly well, but they're workable. They're not deal breakers. There's other things you'd like to introduce, and there's other things you'd like to improve. So um, I think we look at it from that business case of what's the business vision, what is the business priority, and can we align some design towards helping achieve that? Are there things that design can impact on that for the business? Understanding the user perspective too, then enables you to introduce that. It can be very nuanced, and I think it can also be very company specific, because the problems are so unique
Yeah.
that we see in product related challenges from one team to another. You definitely have the broad topics like onboarding, free trials to paid conversions, churn, but it's really when you get into it that the details come out and they become so specific to each company, and that's the really fascinating part.
Yeah. Well, for SaaS startups, maybe early stage companies, resources are always limited. I mean, doesn't matter if probably at any stage company, but yeah, especially early on, what are some of the must-have design elements that they should prioritize?
Within a product or within kind of resources within teams? Is
I
this
think within a product, but the team question is
Yeah,
interesting as well.
yeah. Um, I think it's very important to the route to market and the customer acquisition model. It's important that that's understood and reflected in the journey through the product. So, um, I think just a very clear route to sign up. Um, a good provision for onboarding. In the early stages, I think this should be as simple as possible, rather than having a whole number of pop-ups and checklists and walkthroughs and videos. Sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming. In the early days, I think just a good route through the acquisition flow, sign up, onboarding, and then a clear and easy way to upgrade and get value. Um, Maybe also considering, well, one thing we see a lot is certainly in collaboration tools is how you interact with other users. Do you share work with other users? Do you collaborate with other users? So if it's a project-based tool or something, then we also design good flows for adding users and onboarding additional users, because that contributes towards virality or even account expansion. Some of these things. So they're fundamental components of product-led growth. It's just making it easy for users to try out and adopt the software. I think those are the best areas of design that I would promote, other than just having a good product UX and UI. Those fundamental product-led growth elements, I think they're really important to get, start having them early on.
Yeah. Well, what are some maybe unique challenges that B2B SaaS? Ask that question again. Here we go. 3, 2. What are some unique challenges that B2B SaaS companies face, and specific to UX, UI, compared to consumer-faced products? For example, at B2B, you may have the buyer is one person and the user is another, but they have completely different needs. Yeah, how do you
Yeah.
address those kinds of issues?
Hmm. So we tend to work a lot more on B2B software, and not a great deal of experience on B2C, although sometimes we'll be designing a mobile application or something that does have a B2C, even a B2B2C. We've designed
Yes.
more often. Um, I think often it's the scale of the user base in B2C. Uh, they're usually I'm hesitant to say this, is that they're usually simpler workflows or simpler products on B2C. But
Makes
that's not
sense.
necessarily Yeah, but not always the case. So the the design should be simpler, should be easier to use for the B2C. It really has to be intuitive. Um, and on B2C, you don't have the same kind of provision of customer support or customer success that you would in B2B.
Right.
So you have to put a product out there and assume that people can use it, and have to design it in such a way that they can. Um, I think there's some good elements of design for B2C that B2B can take away from, because you're making it so simple for consumers. And generally, business applications have a lot more complexity and a rich feature set. So if you can simplify them and have them as intuitive as a lot of B2C applications, then I think it's a great thing to aim for. A lot of what we see is companies saying to us, we users have a hard time on the learning curve of our product. Our software has a learning curve, and that makes it
Sure.
difficult for them to adopt a product-led growth model. And it also means that they have a greater provision for customer support and success, because the users need a little bit more attention, a little bit more hand holding. Um, so I think trying to get those complex features designed as simple and easy as possible is a key challenge there.
That's really smart. I like that. Just the crossplay between B2C and B2B can definitely learn from each other.
I think so.
Yeah, yeah. What UX UI trends are emerging specifically in the B2B SaaS space that founders should be paying attention to now?
Oh yeah. Um, the one thing I love about what we do is that I speak to a lot of innovative, forward-thinking people who have great ideas. They're entrepreneurial, and they're trying to solve problems, and they're also using the latest technology. So we're all aware of the impact AI is having, and it's so interesting how it's starting to relate to SaaS, because
Yes.
there's a bit of a rush to adopt AI within software products so that you don't get left behind. Um, uh, and I think but the positive area of it is the things that you can now do. So some of the cool applications we're seeing now are um, almost replacing some of what we know as traditional UI user interface, clicking through, navigating through, clicking on tasks, with almost an AI interface. So prompting, chat, almost more like bot-like interactions and video, with software that's giving feedback or information or data or insights. So we're seeing a few tools like that. One being a tool for business consultants who want to interrogate and research and understand more about a particular business sector for launching new products and services, or tools that help users go through their buying process. Or also AI agents that support existing salespeople, whether they be, field-based outside salespeople, or internal, but they use a CRM and something to just aid and speed up their workflow. So I think that's a trend we're going to see a lot more of in 2025, is AI-enabled SaaS. And what we've seen a lot of this year are software companies who've introduced AI into features, or AI features that they've released in an existing software product. And I think what we're going to see more of in 2025 is software that's been built with AI first as the experience, and that's a really exciting thing, both to see it and both to design for, because it's a kind of almost a new territory for everybody.
Yes. Yes. So, big prediction, 5 years from now, will we still have UI, or will it be like, Iron Man, where we just talk to computers and they talk back and you get this conversation going and, show me the thing and, then it shows up in a hologram or something. Well,
Yeah.
what is the future, 5 years down the road?
Yeah. I think we're still gonna have AI, sorry, UI, traditional UI. We're still gonna have that, and we've got,
I think so too.
we've still got huge, the Salesforces and HubSpots of the world. Um, those products, I don't think they're going anywhere. But I think what we're going to see is more AI that interfaces with those legacy software tools
Yes.
and databases. So I do expect more chat and prompting interaction, a little bit more audio, and some video too. Have you ever seen that movie Wall-E? I think it's
Yes,
a
of course.
Disney. Yeah. So I remember when I first saw that, and how the people are interacting and working, and it's all on screens and very hands on. They're moving the UI with their hands, a bit like,
Right.
I think it was like, there's some other sci-fi films with that kind of UI. I remember seeing that when it came out and thinking, oh, that's quite cool. But now I'm actually seeing things from that, coming into modern UI. So it's really cool. A lot of, I think sci-fi is a really good predictor of where things go
Yes.
in tech.
Yes.
It's just like many years ahead of the reality of when it actually comes out.
So do you think like augmented reality, virtual reality is going to be part of UI on a normal basis? And now it's kind of a novelty, but do you
Yeah,
think it's going to be something that's real mainstream?
I think definitely on the consumer side, or social media and social networking. I'm not, I think that's quite a way off before that's in the B2B context. Yeah, I'm not sure how that will evolve, but we are already seeing a lot of use of AI video with voiceover, and they're
Yeah.
being used in real applications, product demos or product welcome videos where it's a scripted AI talking. And I've seen a few of those which are indistinguishable. When I first saw them in I think it was 2022 or something. When I first saw them, they looked a little bit not exactly real. But
Right.
lately, I've been seeing some that look hard to hard to differentiate between AI and not AI.
Yes.
Just scripted, and it moves the facial features, and it moves the lips of the person speaking just by taking a video of their face, and then it can manipulate it. So I've seen a software tool that creates museum interactive, tours with a scripted AI actor, and product demos with that too. So definitely that aspect is almost here already.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Technology is going so fast, and I mean, especially in this area in design. So very, very cool stuff. Where can people learn more about you and about UserActive online?
So useractive.io is our website. So that's UserActive. The name was based on helping companies get their users more active. So yeah, useractive.io. We have a YouTube channel where we occasionally will do videos on, design principles for SaaS. Um, and I'm active on LinkedIn, so it's Peter Loving on LinkedIn.
Excellent. We'll make sure and link that in the show notes. And UserActive, I mean, you guys are absolutely at the top of your game. I don't know, there's another company out there better. So yeah, everybody should go check out LinkedIn and YouTube and the website for sure. And if they need UI, this is a great company to be talking with.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff. Been great to
Yes.
speak with you on the show.
Thank you for being on SaaS Fuel.
Thanks again, Peter, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. So good. You can learn more about Peter and UserActive at useractive.io. And they have a great, really active Facebook community as well. We'll link that in the show notes. You can go there and check that out. Really, really good stuff. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And of course, be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. Full episodes, video shorts, outtakes, trainings, lots of stuff. It's at Champion Leadership on YouTube. Thought leaders share. Share this episode with anyone who still thinks a sticky note wall is a design sprint substitute. Everyone who shares this week gets a limited edition sprint candle. It burns out after 5 days to remind you of deadlines and maybe your fleeting sanity. Well, have you ever wondered what it takes to scale a tech company from millions to hundreds of millions in just a few years? Well, this Thursday on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, we're joined by Ken London, a sales expert who's helped drive over $1 billion in sales using the RevHeat sales methodology. He's the author of Strategic Selling Unleashed and is super passionate about helping tech companies create predictable, consistent growth. You won't want to miss that conversation. All about Rev Heat. I love it. Ever wondered how technology can change the way we understand human movement? Well, next Tuesday on our founder episode, we're sitting down with Andrew Minter, founder of Fizmodo. They're a groundbreaking company using advanced computer vision to revolutionize movement assessment. From his days as a Division I college athlete to becoming a leader in fitness technology, Andrew has transformed the world of sports injury rehab and fitness assessment. So join us as we dive into his journey and discover how his innovations are reshaping the future of human performance, and he's using SaaS to do it. That is really, really cool. So I will see you next time. Maybe see you at the gym. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.